Let me know if it's on there. It should be.
Yeah, it starts a little delayed.
Okay. So I can go? All right. I'm here with the Bronze Age boy, Dean Cooper. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's my pleasure. You're welcome.
We are at FanQuest, where you are hawking your wares.
I am. Yes.
And your wares are Bronze Age comics.
Yeah, I kind of specialize in high-grade bronze comics, which for the uninitiated is pretty much the period of the 1970s. So there's a real market for really high-grade, very fine, near mint or better books, and that's what I try and specialize in.
Do you exclusively sell at conventions, or?
No, I buy and sell online on eBay as well. My username is Bronze Age Boy, all one word, and I've been actually buying and selling on eBay for about 17 years.
Wow.
So quite a while. Yeah.
So why are you so interested in Bronze Age comics?
You know what? I don't know. I just kind of think they're really cool. I mean, it was a decade where there was a lot more violence in comics. They were trying out new things. A lot of the big heroes of today were like Wolverine and the Punisher and Luke Cage, and goes on and on and on. All these characters that came of age in the 1970s.
Right. There was also a kind of a shift to non-superhero comics, right?
Oh yeah, I mean there's a lot of great horror comics as well from the 70s. I mean, and that's a real very, very popular genre is 70s horror. Both Marvel and DC had some amazing, really great books and fantastic artwork. I mean, you've got Neil Adams and the late Bernie Wrightson and a lot of other fantastic artists who did a lot of horror specifically in the 70s.
Do you have a preference on, do you like superhero comics or?
Not really. You know what? I'm just always really interested in really high-grade, older comics, and I buy and sell a lot of them too. So if anybody wants to try and get a hold of me and has some older comics they want to sell, bronzeageboy@yahoo.com.
When you say high grade, do you mean basically good quality, mint condition?
Yeah, high grade stuff that's not all beat up, stuff that looks really nice, is kind of flat, there's no creases, the corners are still sharp.
So no one's read it.
Well, yeah, or they've read it very, very lightly.
Right.
It's very gently used, and then they put it away in a bag and whatnot. I mean, there's a market for really high-grade comics, and there's a market for, just regular, normal, used comics, but I tend to specialize in stuff that almost looks new. But it's getting harder and harder to find, and of course, when you do find it, boy, oh boy, it can be very, very pricey.
So we actually spoke, I think, either the last C4 or before that,
okay.
And I had asked you if there's any love of reading the comics anymore. And
for
you
sure.
kind of did tell me, though, you were like, well, I'm out there trying to make a buck.
Well, no, I mean, this is a hobby of mine. So, I mean, some people flip houses, some people flip cars. They'll buy cars, fix them up and resell them. They'll buy houses, refix them up and sell them. Well, I try and do the same for comic books, right? I mean, it's like the show American Pickers. The guys that are trying to look for all these old antiques for their store that they can then go ahead and resell. I mean, there's lots of people doing this. But everybody specializes in different genres, and I think I found a bit of a niche.
But you do still read them?
Oh, of course. No, I go to my local comic book store at least once a week, if not once every couple of weeks, and it's still fun to read comics for sure. But I kind of have more fun trying to find them in the first place and then selling them.
Right, I kind of get that. With Super Nintendo games, I half collect them, and most of the fun is I found it.
There you go. And there's a huge market for video games now, right? I mean, and ones that are maybe they didn't make as many, and they're much harder to find, so they're more expensive. I mean, comics are no different. So,
what is the most valuable comic you either currently own or have owned?
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I haven't really owned a lot of, quote, really valuable comics compared to, comics that a lot of guys do have. I mean, I've had a couple of really nice copies of Amazing Spider-Man 129, which is the first appearance of the Punisher. I had a 9.6 copy of Werewolf by Night #1, which, to those familiar with Bronze Age horror, is a really tough book to find. Nothing really crazy. I mean, the guys that collect Silver and Golden Age comics, I mean, those comics run $10, $15, $50,000 into the six figures, So I tend to deal in comics that are, in the maybe $50 to $100 range, ideally.
Right.
So I don't really have a ton of expensive comics per se.
So, similar question. Other than Superman #1, what would be your Superman #1?
You know what? I mean, I don't know. I'd love to own a copy of Hulk 181, which is the first appearance of Wolverine. And Amazing Fantasy 15, which is the very first appearance of Spider-Man. That comic is just going through the stratosphere. I mean, it's just so expensive. I mean, you can buy houses with the cost of some of these comics nowadays, So there's not really one holy grail. I'm just always on the lookout for really, really nicely graded, high-grade comics from the 1970s. So if anybody has any and they're looking to get a hold of me, Bronze Age Boy, all one word, bronzeageboy@yahoo.com.
You did get a copy of a signed Spawn yesterday.
Yes, I won it.
I was one number off myself.
I won it, yes. It was a graphic novel of Spawn, signed by Todd McFarlane at the Calgary Expo last week. I met Todd McFarlane about 25 years ago, too, in Toronto. Very nice guy. And he doesn't charge for his autograph either. You give him his stuff, and he'll just sign it for you, and it's all good. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
As a kiosk operator,
yes.
Do you have any tips for people who are maybe trying to sell their own stuff?
Wow, that's a very, very good question. Yeah. Boy, oh boy. What would I would say that you should have a good display, especially as a comic person. You need to have your wares prominently displayed and nice and neat and tidy. I like to have all my comics that I brought to the show on display so everybody can see them. Some guys just line up 10 or 15 comic boxes and people will go through the boxes, right? And that's fine too. But because my stuff is very high grade, like I want people to see it. So I don't know. Oh, I say the number one thing is be ready to deal, because everybody wants a deal. No matter how cheaply you've priced something, somebody will want it cheaper. So you have to have thick skin. Don't get offended if somebody really lowballs you. I mean, you can laugh it off and everything, but everybody wants a deal. So be prepared to wheel and deal and give bargains for people if they buy more than one thing.
Right. Well, that maybe leads into the next question, which is what's the most irritating question that comes up typically?
You know what? The most irritating thing that comes up is when people walk by my table and they say, "Oh, I had that comic. I had that comic. Oh, yeah, I had that comic as a kid." And that's all they say, and then they walk away. It's like, well, why don't you buy something?
Right.
Instead of just telling me you had it as a kid.
Right. I figure a lot of people probably come to chat.
And that's the next thing, is that, I'm trying to sell. Don't come and stand at my table for half an hour and talk to me about the latest storyline of The Flash and how you don't agree with the editorial content in this particular thing. You know what? Like, I'm here to sell books. I'm not here to talk to you for half an hour. As much as I love talking to people, but sometimes it gets a little annoying. And I've had guys that will literally stand at your table for half an hour or 45 minutes and try and talk to you, while other people clearly want to buy something and clearly want to talk to you as well. So, talk about the latest story arc in Batman and then move on.
All right. Well, Dean Cooper, Bronze Age Boy, find him at FanQuest here or on eBay.
Or if you've got something to sell that's high grade that you think I'd be interested in, bronzeageboy@yahoo.com.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anytime.
And once again, everyone, like us on Facebook, Super Gamer Podcast. Post on our wall your favorite game and why, and you're entered into one of two draws. Two draws, really. You're entered in both to win a $20 Steam card or a $20 PSN card. Bye, everyone.